Chapter 26, Volsung. Tree, do you realize that you can't win this fight? I do. It's just that I don't really care anymore and would rather take a few of you with me. Having said that, I fully released my bloodlust. A familiar red mist quickly pervaded the area and promptly reached the opposing trio. Volsung was unaffected by my bloodlust, but both of his subordinates began to groan in pain. They were old and their hearts couldn't handle stress from being under this much pressure. Behind me, splashing could be heard and 8 tempest wolves rushed over. I had managed to speed up their growth by using their corpses I had collected so long ago. So you have reinforcement? What will a few wild beasts do? They are more likely to attack the town. One of the old men spoke. I grew them myself, so they won't disregard my will so easily. To prove my point, I let the wolves form a phalanx. They were ready to pounce at a moment's notice. They would make very little difference against Volsung, but they could buy me a few seconds. Volsung just stood there, not overly impressed, but looking slightly concerned about his followers. Suddenly his gaze turned sharp, his black wool cloak began levitating under a phantom wind. My bloodlust was pushed back by an invincible intent that moved like a snail with the power of a dragon. Eldar. I don't want to fight you. Pull back your bloodlust and let us talk. I'm prepared to compromise. A concession? I couldn't find any reason to refuse further negotiations. I reeled back my bloodlust and the surroundings became clear again. The old men could breathe freely again. I'm listening, human. I admit that it was partly our fault with the happenings of the noble, but I swear to you that we didn't know it would end so badly. I can also exempt you from any taxes, but we are not able to pay you for granting us your territory. I can live with that. However, I do have a condition. I want a trading permit to be able to buy beast corpses and other necessary resources from the town. After all, this is crucial for my evolution. A trading permit. It seems we have reached an agreement. Thus, the first official agreement between myself and the Sky Kingdom was formed. I would keep up the barrier and in return, I would be exempted from taxes and receive permission to trade freely. Now, regarding the contract. Right, you humans always make a written contract for everything. I hope you aren't expecting a signature from me. You have a point. Asking you to sign a document would be difficult. Well, I will be stationed here for a long time, so let's just make it a promise between men. Bold of you to assume I am male. My bluff was easily seen through. Volsung chuckled and headed towards the inn. The next day, the 2 old magi returned to Utgard while Volsung decided to stay. According to himself, he was in much need of a break. I spent the next few days getting used to my new powers and rights. To begin with, I created a thin wooden wall between 2 of the outer trees, creating a signboard. Thereon stood in clear, carved letters. Dear reader, have you ever wondered what to do with a beast's core after hunting it? Wonder no more. Eldar Merchant Guild will buy those beast corpses. You can trade for precious metals or the chance to tame a beast. More trading products may follow. A masterpiece of my own creation. Volsung had been down for 10 minutes after reading it. Laughter had been shaking his body so badly that standing hadn't been possible anymore. I couldn't decide whether I should feel insulted for being laughed at or proud for forcing a man as strong as Volsung to the ground for 10 minutes. By the way, business was bad. No one was willing to bet their lives for money if they could live a somewhat stable life here. The wage system would only be implemented once the merchants, blacksmiths, tailors, and carpenters arrived. This would probably happen in the next months, forcing me to wait for a while. I had also begun to grow things again. Sadly, I was short on corpses, so I would have to wait for the Tempest Wolves to grow. 1 month suddenly seemed like such a long time. Chapter 27, Beast Mode. The days were going by slowly. Growing was a gradual and very passive process, and a trade wouldn't happen any time soon. Thus, I spent most of my time trying to clear the next evolution criteria. There were only 2 of them, and that was too many. The one I was working on right now was tri-wielding magic. The other one was to successfully grow a savage beast. Tri-wielding was hard enough. I could even control 2 kinds of magic at the same time. How could I do 3? But the true problem was the savage beast. It roughly equals a human Marquis Magus, just that a beast would always win in a direct confrontation. Now my own strength was roughly at that level too, meaning that thing would probably not show me any respect and potentially try to kill me. Not even speaking of where I would get the body from and how long it would take me to deduce and grow it. Yes, I had my reasons to be a little depressed. Believe me, simultaneously using different elements is hard. I was currently trying to grow a tree and electrify it at the same time. There was charred wood spread all around from all the times the elements collided and spontaneously combusted. I needed a break so badly. But I just couldn't bring myself to stop trying. I had taken it easy once and the consequences were disastrous. No repeats. Back to trying. Another explosion, more debris. Rinse and repeat. Explosion, repeat, explosion, again, explosion, keep going, explosion, Volsung. Volsung? He had appeared out of nowhere, below him a crater from the force he used to stop his charge. It was the first time I had seen Volsung's face show any emotion. Wait, not the point. Why did he charge over? The spell you taught Nerita, what is it? He seemed excited, ecstatic even. You mean beast mode? It's a basic transmutation spell for stimulating a beast's bloodline. Can you teach me the spell? Sure, but I need to scan the bloodline in your body and calibrate the spell. Also, some compensation would be required. Does the strength and purity of the bloodline matter? Volsung, your question scares me. Tell me the exact situation. Well, I can't disclose too much, but if hypothetically someone were to have killed a dragon and successfully received its bloodline. A dragon. And he is the direct recipient. What the hell are you saying? I'd have to fine-tune the spell for hours. Do you know how volatile a newly acquired draconic bloodline is? Killing a dragon and assimilating its bloodline. Only fools and truly powerful people would attempt that. The only one I knew of that possessed a draconic bloodline was Lord Abel, one of the sovereigns of my former world. But he isn't to ever be measured with normal standards. Is it impossible to fully harness the power of such a bloodline? Define fully harness. If you mean transformation like Nerita's, it's possible, albeit bothersome. If you think of a full transformation into a dragon, then you can forget about it. The former is fully sufficient. When can we start? Not so fast there. Let me make this clear. I can't guarantee success, and I'll have to take a look first. And about that payment. We will discuss the final payment after you can tell us the odds of success. For now, if it's something minor, I can pull some strings, but don't expect too much. If any beasts obstruct your journey, bring their corpses along. Will do. And just like that, he had disappeared with a bang and another crater where he had been standing. And back to practice I went. Explosion after explosion, I refined my control over the elements. Gradually, the elements coexisted next to each other for seconds. It was still followed by an explosion every time, but those seconds were real progress. A month had passed during my training. Nothing much happened, and that was just about what I expected. Finally, the fresh blood for the town arrived. A blacksmith, some merchants, carpenters, and tailors. With them came soldiers, adventurers, and some much-needed business. I only had 2 blueprints and only one of a beast. I had more than 50 wolves now, but I wanted diversity. Chapter 28, Trade. Trade was about to get going. An adventurer approached the signboard. With his light leather armor and a bow slung across his shoulder, he looked like a ranger. He didn't give me the impression of someone strong, but seemed more like the careful and calculating type. Both his clothes and armor were colored with patches of green and brown, aiding with stealth. Potential to be a good hunter. Lord Eldar, you wrote here you'll buy beast corpses. What about animals? I will buy them, but only once per species and at a lower price compared to a beast's. There are no exchange rates here. Why is that? There was little to no business so far. Also, it's simple. Beasts I already have, 1 iron ingot per body. Beast that I don't have, 1 silver ingot for the first body. Savage beasts' bodies would hypothetically give 20 gold. Animals are 5 for an iron ingot. Finally, a chance for taming is worth 2 iron ingots or 2 beasts I already have. Why didn't you just write it down? I just did. During my short explanation, I had engraved it on the signboard. Then, what animals do you already have? A squirrel. That's it? I'm a tree. I can't go after animals and hunt them. The ranger then excused himself and left for the forest. Over the next few days, he brought me 1 animal corpse after another. I had so far newly collected 10 animals. Deer, bunny, boar, wolf, lizard, snake, spider, sparrow, fox, and even a bear. The ranger, named Sven, hadn't claimed any reward yet, and I soon came to know the reason. He wanted to tame a tempest wolf. Taming was a rather peculiar process. After a tamer gained respect and trust from a beast, they could sign a contract. The specifics of this contract would be decided by how the contract was formed. If it was formed through mutual respect, it would be an equals contract, binding both parties to help the other. If it was established through the dominance of the tamer, it would be a tamer-servant contract. If it was established through the dominance of the beast, it was a beast-servant contract. Also, a contract could not be forced. Death was always an alternative. The contract that Sven was hoping to achieve was an equals contract. He wasn't as strong as a tempest wolf, but with my help, it might be possible to still succeed. I commanded one of the tempest wolves to come over. It approached, but seemed increasingly apprehensive against the human in front of it. Lord Eldar, what should I do now? How would I know? Get it to like you, or something like that. My only task here is to give you a safe environment by making sure it doesn't bite your head off. He looked a little disappointed. He must have been hoping for some miracle cheat that would result in an instant contract. Nevertheless, he had prepared something else. He grabbed a big chunk of meat from his pouch, held it up, and conjured a little fire beneath it. A magus, huh? He cooked the meat until it was golden brown, dripping with fat. The tempest wolf was already salivating and looking greedily at the piece of meat. Sven would probably have already lost his life to the hungry wolf if I didn't forbid it from attacking it. Hello, Mr. Wolf, I am Sven. Would you like to make a contract with me? I can give you more delicious food if you accept. It was a low blow. The wolf wasn't allowed to attack, but wanted the delicious food in front of it. Tempest wolves aren't the smartest in the forest, so this one didn't even get the unfairness of the situation. Any human in its position would complain, but this wolf simply agreed. A golden current manifested between them, extending in both directions until it connected their hearts. Sven's strategy had worked. He threw the meat towards the Tempest wolf, that jumped up, grabbed it and devoured it within seconds. The more the news of this event spread, the more outraged the other adventurers became. They knew Sven, he was both a magus and a fighter, but hadn't reached the Night Realm in either. For him to have a companion that could defeat a Baron magus. He was now the strongest among them. Even worse, the way he used wasn't possible to imitate. He had brought most of the animals that were commonly seen in the forest. Meaning the only way to get a chance to tame a Tempest wolf was to either kill two and bring their corpses to Eldar, or kill a different beast. But just the idea of this was ludicrous to them. They were jealous of Sven for having a beast that they couldn't defeat. So how should they hunt such a beast? Naturally, there were some that thought of a solution to this problem. One of them might not be able to defeat a beast, but if the stronger ones formed a team, they could do it. Chapter 29, Arrival. The second month since Volsung's hasty departure was coming to an end. I was unsure where Volsung had gone to and how long it would take him. For now, all I could do on that front was wait. I kept myself busy by training dual-wielding lightning and nature. It was a beautiful day outside. Birds were singing, flowers were blooming. On days like these, trees like me should be the only ones allowed to create explosions. However, today wasn't meant to be like this. I was just peacefully appreciating the explosions my magic brought out. Then, out of nowhere, the mayor's house inside town exploded and collapsed. It was no fancy explosion with fire and charred remains. It was more of an expulsion of energy that broke one of the main support pillars and collapsed the house. Nerita had broken through to the early Baroness Mega realm. This speed may seem astonishing, but honestly, it wasn't anything special considering her situation. By awakening her bloodline, it would passively aid her in reaching the level it was formerly at. The downside of this was that once it reached its former strength, it would slow down her progress instead. Thus, Nerita would face huge difficulties in reaching the Viscountess Mega realm. Later that day, Sven approached me with an offer. He had found a beast in the forest, but wasn't confident in defeating it. His proposal was for me to lend him 3 more Tempest wolves in return for half the reward. For every casualty, the reward would be halved. I accepted. I mean, I had nothing to lose. Those 3 wolves were nothing to me. I could just grow more of them. In fact, I was already doing just that. Getting new blueprints was my priority right now. I commanded 3 wolves to follow Sven's orders and sent him on his way. Only days after, Volsung returned. He was riding a majestic lion, and following him were 2 carriages. Well, it would probably be more accurate to say there was 1 carriage while the other one was a heavy wagon. The small group was completely made up of powerful individuals. I estimated that even the weakest of them were at the Count realm. They disembarked and Volsung came over. Nice to see you again. How was your journey? Not too bad. Now, when is the earliest you can start the checkup? You seem overly hurried. We can begin now if you want. I understand. I'll bring them over. Volsung gave me a grateful look and returned to the carriage. Meanwhile, I was completely baffled by what he said. Them? There was more than one? What were the chances for multiple individuals to survive consuming the blood and flesh of a dragon? Volsung came back with 3 hooded figures, guarded by 2 men that I judged to both be Duke Magi. That must be someone important these 2 were guarding. You weren't hypothetically talking about 3. There are just 2. Lord Eldar, I am Signe, sister to the king. Pleased to meet you. One of the hooded figures spoke with a gentle voice. Signe, you shouldn't say who you are out loud. There may be assassins around. Uncle, you're being overly worried again. I'm an early Marquis Mega, and you are here too. Who could hurt me? So if Signe was the king's sister, and Volsung was Signe's uncle, then Volsung is the king's uncle? It began to look like I was quite well acquainted with the royal family. Back to the subject at hand. Eldar, I apologize for not telling you the specifics, but could we do this in a more secure location? I'm a tree, I can't move. Oh, we'll just have to set up a perimeter. Volsung and the 2 guards formed a triangle around my outermost tree circle. Signe took over the conversation once again. She removed her hood, revealing a gorgeous face framed in a flood of golden hair. Lord Eldar, please allow me to clear things up. These here are my nephews, they each have a dragon's bloodline. Come on, you two, introduce yourselves. The 2 hooded figures revealed their faces. Chapter 30, The Princesses? Their faces were nearly identical. Their long, blonde hair was tied back, and their blue eyes, that seemed like deep ponds, seemed bottomless. Though, one of them, the one on the right, seemed a little feminine. It must be my imagination. The one on the left spoke first. With a deep voice and a stern look, he used his words as sparingly as if they were made of pure gold. Prince Sigourd. Signe was evidently displeased with his attitude but held back any comment. Then, the second one spoke. Sorry, his voice was so soft and smooth. I was really starting to doubt my sanity and maybe my sexuality. Greetings, Lord Eldar, my name is Siegfried. It's a great pleasure to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet you too. Now I heard you acquired a rather powerful bloodline and would like to awaken it. For this, I will have to examine your bodies. Who will go first? And as I said the word examine, Siegfried flinched. It seemed like he wanted to take a step back, but was stopped by Signe. Like it was the natural thing to do, Sigurd stepped forward. Begin then. That's not how it works. Sit with your back against me, and don't block my magic. He did as I told him, but I have to mention, he sat like he had a stick up his ass. I carefully sent my magic into his body, and what I saw was not pleasant to look at. And while I was looking at that mess, a strong mental wave hit my magic and pushed me out. Not before I could leave a little present though, smiley face. Well, I'd say you have bigger problems than just awakening your bloodline. Let me guess, you didn't just consume some parts of a dragon, but ate the whole thing. However, that wasn't enough for you, was it? You had to artificially stimulate your bloodline. Honestly, this whole situation is one big mess. Tell me exactly what happened, how you got your bloodline, and how you stimulated it. Lord Eldar, I found some notes in the royal library that said after a bloodline was successfully received, there would be no problems. Why is your account so different? That's easy. How many people do you think survived eating a monster on the level of a dragon hull? Once a monster reaches that level, it isn't a simple monster anymore. Consuming it without adequate preparations will have consequences. Sigh. Fine. Sigourd, please tell him. We were separated from our escort and followed by assassins. While fleeing, we hid in a cave. Further down, we heard sounds of fighting. We followed the sound in hopes of finding our escort. We found 2 dragons fighting. They killed each other. The assassins had entered the cave. We both ate a part of the dragon. Then we blacked out. Afterward, the assassins were already dead and the dragons were gone. We left to find our escort. We met more assassins. During the fight, I blacked out again. According to Siegfried, I grew horns and claws. After killing the assassins, I collapsed. Siegfried carried me back to our previous camp where we found our escort. Since then, there were no abnormalities. My goddess, could this boy really not speak or act like a normal human? Never mind, it was just as I had thought. While I was still brooding over what I just heard, Sigourd was getting impatient. What is it? Can you help us or not? Well, ignoring the fact that you lied to me, yes, I can help you. And how would you know I lied? You weren't there. I might not have been there, but I know the symptoms of the problem you have been describing. There were no abnormalities since. You call that voice in your head normal? How do you know about that? To my great astonishment, it was Siegfried that said this. Sigourd just has panic written all over his face. Seems like they both suffered from the same symptoms. Let me explain some things then. I assume you first ate the dragon's hearts, as it is commonly known that this provides the highest chance for successfully receiving a bloodline. By doing that, you accidentally consumed the dragon's magic core, and through that their soul. Under the immense pain of the dragon bloodline integrating into your body, the dragon's souls could temporarily take over your bodies. They consumed the rest of their corpses, transformed and killed the assassins. Since then they are talking in your heads. They are probably trying to convince you to give them your bodies, hence the second loss of consciousness while fighting the assassins. Can you help us or not?